Will there be snow on Friday? And how long will the cold last? Those are the questions on my mind. So let's take a look first at the upper level pattern as it stands today. Here we are. The snow and wintry mix has ended here on Tuesday, and we are left with a very cold pattern with a negative NAO blocking pattern ridge overhead over the Arctic region over Alaska. This is bringing cold air down around the polar vortex, keeping the Philadelphia area in a cold pattern for the remainder of this week into the weekend and a little bit of next week. So the question on a lot of people's minds now is what is going to happen on Friday? So as far as some of the major features, let's put this into motion a little bit. Get to Thursday. So this is around lunchtime on Thursday. So as far as my winter storm checklist, do we have a ridge out west? Yeah, sort of. It's not the best, but you see the red here, the higher heights poking up along the west coast. So you have a positive PNA or neutral to positive PNA. But this helps keep the energy from dumping out west, and it keeps it east of the Rockies, diving down to the plains, tapping that Gulf moisture, as we talked about in yesterday's video. And meanwhile, the cold is already in place. I look over here, over the 50-50 latitude, 50 longitude region, the 50-50 region by Newfoundland. And is there a trough of low pressure? There absolutely is, a very strong trough of low pressure. This is actually the polar vortex that was over Hudson Bay. Right now, a portion of that breaks off and slides over this region. So this helps block the storm systems from tracking to our west, keeps them offshore, and keeps the cold trapped at the surface. You have what was the negative NAO, or the blocking high, starting to sink down. So the pattern is breaking down. This will lead to a milder pattern middle of next week and for 7 to 10 days beyond that. Well, actually, I can't predict the future that far, but there is going to be a brief January thaw that is expected after these last couple Arctic shots through the weekend. So anyway, this is working its way down to the continental United States, energy diving down off that west coast ridge, and somewhere in here is our storm system. This to me screams moisture getting drawn up, overrunning the cold air in place. The question is, will this be a big storm, a weak storm, a prolonged storm, or a quick storm? Let's take a little closer look. So zooming in on the eastern United States, so this is, again, around Thursday into Friday overnight. That energy that was diving off the PNA, or the West Coast Ridge, is stretched out here. So actually kind of a similar look to the storm that we just finished up. The big differences here, not differences, but the enhancements are the confluent flow, or basically because of the 50-50 low pressure that's sitting around Newfoundland, it is keeping everything blocked up here. So look at this flow from west to east across southeastern Canada, through northern Maine into southeast to Canada again, and this is preventing this system certainly from cutting to the west. But it's actually so strong that it's, in a sense, in part, stretching the energy out versus digging this trough deep. So what we see when we put this into motion is you have the other lobe of the polar vortex that was over Hudson Bay. A portion of it went west, the majority of it went east, and this was the new energy that came off the Pacific Ocean. So if you notice, they're separate. So we do not have a full phase of the two pieces of energy. And if we did, this would be a much larger storm. Instead, we're going to have a lighter overrunning event, and then a potentially prolonged event from what's called an inverted trough. And I'll show you that signal next and describe what that means and how hard it is to predict. But if you put this into motion, you can see the energy remaining separate. But this is a lot of energy to be undercutting the Middle Atlantic region. And within this is a lot of moisture that was coming up from the southwest over this cold pool. And similar to what we saw in the past 24 hours, you're going to have snowfall basically through the Tennessee Valley up into the Mid-Atlantic. And it'll only get so far to the north, though, because of this block up here. It's a lot of dry air. Let me see if I can show you the dew point. So this is the dew points, or the amount of moisture in the air. And as that coastal system starts to take shape, it will basically get shoved to the east because of all this northerly flow up in southeastern Canada. We saw before that 50-50 low blocking things up. The upper level flow going due west to east across northern Maine. And look at these dew points, negative 28 in southeastern Canada, negative 11. It's so dry up here that the moisture just simply fizzles out before it can get there. So there's going to be a northern limit to the extent of the precipitation unless the storm does phase more cleanly than it looks to be now. Taking a look at the surface precipitation maps, and you'll see because that energy is split, you have a piece here and the other piece coming down from Canada. They are remaining separate as a result. Yes, there is precipitation. Moisture is coming up from the Gulf. It is overrunning that very cold air in place. So there will be precipitation that forms. I'd be shocked if there isn't precipitation that forms. And I do feel that a scenario that we saw over the past 24 hours could play out again for Friday into Saturday. But I think it will be colder. Even down at the shore, it should remain mainly snow, again, unless this storm wraps up and stays closer to the coast. Things can still change, but as of right now, this looks like two separate pieces of energy, partially phasing, too late, though, for a large system, but this could be a prolonged snowfall somewhere along the Mid-Atlantic coast. And I say somewhere is the first batch will be this overrunning precipitation. You can see the light snow. Let me zoom in a little bit more. Light snow for most of the area. And then the question is, will there be a prolonged period? And let me give a different map to show some more detail. All right, this is the long-range NAM. It's not something that I rely on. This is out of its useful range. Here we are at day 3. It's usually good for within 36 hours. But I just want to show you a feature that's been prominently displayed on the different pieces of guidance that we look at different times is what's called an inverted trough. So the warm air overflowing the cold air in place. Let me show you what the temperatures are at this point in time on Friday. 20s, And again, it gets close to freezing because there is some southerly flow with the system coming up, but it really should be cold enough in most areas to remain predominantly snow compared to the most recent event. And as that cold air or warm air comes over the cold air, precipitation breaks out. The initial, again, similar to the recent storm where areas from the city south saw the majority of the snow. And that seems to be the case for that initial band that comes through. The question is, will this inverted trough setup where you can kind of see it's difficult to show here, but the isobars, see how they kind of stretch out towards the coast here? See how they stretch out, they stretch out, they stretch out, and you have enhanced precipitation as a result. So this is known as an inverted trough, sometimes a Norland trough. And this is difficult to pinpoint, very unreliable, but there have been many examples over the years where this, in a very finite, small area, will enhance precipitation. You could have double to triple what areas to the north and south see. Now, right now, this particular model shows it right over the Philadelphia region. Other models show it south. Other models show it north. Other models don't have it at all. So it's a big question mark, but I think there is merit to it when I look at the upper levels. So let me show you, this is at 850 millibars, about 5 to 6,000 feet off the ground. And you recall, even higher than that, it was a straight west-east flow, southwest and northeast to our south. But look at this, at this level in the atmosphere, you have some crazy things going on. So you have the northerly flow because of that blocking pattern up north, just strong bone-dry air coming out from Canada. You have more of the southerly flow ahead of the system here. And then you have this convergence point, whether that sets up here, somewhere within, from southern Massachusetts, southern New England down to the Delmarva. I do anticipate the way it looks now for some convergence zone or an inverted trough to set up and potentially prolong and enhance snowfall totals somewhere in that area. But just look at this. You might not have familiarity, but look at this. We get the gist. So northerly flow, southerly flow, and right here is this battleground. It stretches out. So you can see northerly flow, southerly flow, northerly flow, southerly flow. And this is hundreds of miles effectively. And it just kind of lingers there for a while. And you see that on the moisture or on the precipitation, how the main batch, this is the lead low. So it takes the warm air advection or the initial overrunning precipitation out to sea. Typically, that would be it. The storm will be done. But because of that convergence zone with a northerly flow above and the southerly flow below, and it just stretches out with that we looked at the vorticity in the original, or at the beginning of this conversation, how it was stretched out and to our south here. You can see it here. Just look at all this energy in the upper levels of the atmosphere. Then you have the convergence zone just off the surface, and you put it all together. Somewhere we'll have an enhancement of snowfall totals. In this case, excuse me, this is showing, again, it's not much, and this is an unreliable long-range prediction by a model that is not used in long-range form. But it's, let me pull up other models to show you how it keeps showing up. So on the Canadian high-res, it shows up there. On the German model, it doesn't show up at all. If that doesn't help. But I promise you it's there. Not good examples at the end here. But anyway, so with that inverted trough, that convergence zone, with all that energy in the upper levels of the atmosphere going to our south, and with the two pieces of energy not phasing to our west, put it all together, and I see a light to moderate snowfall in the Mid-Atlantic region. Pinpointing who's going to see the most is impossible at this point. We just have to wait and see. Sometimes you will not know until the precipitation starts exactly where that convergence zone may set up. This could all change if those two pieces of energy phase sooner or farther to our west. That changes everything. It could have one primary system closer to the coast, and now we have a major storm. I don't expect that. I think there's less than a 20% chance of that, maybe less than 10%. So it's more of an overrunning event to start, similar to the past 18 hours here. And then we have the wild card, the bonus enhancement of precipitation somewhere between southern New England and the Delmarva region.